Mirëmbrëma dhe mirë se erdhët. I ftuari imi sotëm është një përfaqësues i diasporës shqiptare, shqiptaro-amerikan që e keni dëgjuar shpesh besoj emrin e tij për shkak të publikimeve dhe të qenurit mjaft aktiv në ekspozimin atyre që ai i ka konsideruar si skandale apo afera të kryeministrave shqiptar ndër vite. Kontributi i tij ka nisur që prej viteve 1990 pas rënies së komunizmit me kontribut për luftën e Kosovës apo dhe ndihma humanitare për Shqipërinë në demokracinë e viteve të varfra e të vështira, një demokraci që ende duket se nuk e ka arritur qëllimin për cilin ai lufton, një demokraci të qëndrueshme. Ja i ftuar një person.
Geri Kokalari, shqiptaro-amerikan, themeluesi i organizatës së shqiptarëve për një Shqipëri demokratike dhe zyrës së parë lobuese për shqiptarët në Washington. Me fondacionin ndihmës ka ofruar mbi $10 milion ndihmë humanitare në Shqipëri, si dhe organizoi ndihma për kosovarët refugjat në kampet e Maqedonisë në 1999. Është zëvendës president dhe mbikëqyrës kryesor financiar i zyrës Merrill Lynch, që prej 1994-s ka përdorur njohjet e tij në botën financiare dhe politike në Shtetet e Bashkuara për të ekspozuar ato që Kokalari ka quajtur skandale të ish kryeministrave Nano dhe Berisha. Për kryeministrin Rama pohon se nuk ka prova për korrupsion, por nëse do të ketë, do t'i publikojë.
Geri Kokalari, mirëmbrëma, mirë se erdhët në Tonight.
Faleminderit.
Flisni shqip?
Me vesh një qik.
Me vesh një qik. Gjithë këto vite, gjithë ky interes për Shqipërinë, nuk ju ka bërë që ta përmirësoni dhe gjuhën? Do you want to continue in English then?
I prefer.
All this interest that you have shown during these years in Albania haven't helped you, or didn't you feel the need to learn Albanian, to improve it?
I would have been nice, but I find the Albanian language a little bit difficult. I know some words in Albanian, but I don't know if you want me to repeat them here on your program.
Depends on the words you know, and we are in front of a public that maybe may not want to hear everything that you know in Albanian. But your mother, Drita, which I've been lucky to interview her some years ago, she did speak some impressive Albanian.
Yes, she spoke Albanian. I could understand, especially when I was younger, I could understand quite a bit of the Albanian, but being away from it, I lost my ear a little bit. So.
Can we share with the Albanian public what's the story of your family, your
Sure.
father as well? How did they move to the States?
Yes. My father was born in Gjirokastër. He left as a young boy. I think he was about 13 years old. His father had preceded him to the United States, like they did in those days, and he was here for about 5 years. Then he sent for his family, his wife, and there were 3 children, 2 daughters and a boy. So they migrated to New York. He served in U.S. Army Air Corps during World War II. And then when he got out, he married my mother, Drita. They met in New York City. There was a community where there were mainly a small community of Albanian Americans, mainly Albanians from Gjirokastër and from Labaria.
Is your mother as well from Gjirokastër?
No, my mother's family is from Kurvelesh, Novica. And her father came in the early 1900s, and she was born in the United States, as were her brothers and sisters. So, and then my grandfather originally came to Massachusetts and then Rhode Island. And during the Depression in the United States, they moved to New York City, a place called Norfolk Street, where all the Albanians lived. And that's where my mother and father met, in the Albanian American community. And that's why I'm here today.
Norfolk is not the nicest area in the States, is it?
It's funny you mention that, because at that time, it was in the Lower East Side of Manhattan, and many Eastern European immigrants and Jewish immigrants went to that part of the city because they could live there very economically. But interestingly enough, it's become more affluent in recent years, and one of my cousins has recently moved back to the neighborhood, and he bought a big apartment there. So it's gone full circle.
Full circle. What kept your, let's say, the light of loving and following Albania on during these years? Because you have been born in the States, raised there. How do you explain this interest you have on the country?
Well, my family's been involved in affairs of Albanian American community for a century. My grandfather was involved with Vatra. He was a president of Vatra. He was friends with Fanoli. My father knew Fanoli. My father was involved with Vatra. My father was president of Albanian Center in New York, which started the first Albanian school for Albanians in New York in 1939. They also opened the first jami for Albanians in New York. My father wasn't a very religious man, but he thought that Albanians should have had a place of worship. They also helped support developing the Albanian church. So we've been involved in this community for a long, long time. I started getting involved really with Kosovo in the 1980s because I had met some Kosovars. And they said, we need help. And so that's when I started getting involved in lobbying for Albania. Then when Albania opened up after communism, I saw what was happening here. It made me very, very sad. You could see that the conditions in Albania were absolutely terrible. So I said I had to do something. So we got together with some other Albanian Americans, and we founded the Albanian Relief Foundation, and we started shipping humanitarian aid. And through these relationships, I started meeting other Albanians and started meeting people in political life here in Albania, and one stone turned another one over, and I started getting involved in these matters.
We'll go there step by step, but allow me to ask you how you will evaluate the contribution of the Albanian diaspora during these years.
Well, you asked me, and by the way, I want to just preface, everything that I say here is my personal opinion. It has nothing really to do with my professional affiliations, except for my affiliation with the NGOs that I work with, and I just want to make sure we're clear about that.
Indeed. Yeah.
I think the question I would ask is, I find them apathetic. People say, well, why do you do what you're doing? What I'm asking is, why aren't more members of the diaspora doing something when they can? I see the Kosovar diaspora, which are very aggressive, very active, and they are very dedicated to the cause of Kosovo. But I don't see a lot of Albanian Americans who are from the diaspora in Albania doing a lot for Albania, and I wish there would be more. So again, instead of the question asking me why I'm doing what I'm doing, I ask the question, why aren't more of them doing more for Albania?
Actually, the question was, how do you evaluate the contribution they're giving, if there is any?
Well, I guess what I'm saying is the contribution it's apathy and not very good. And it should be more.
Have you wondered why?
Yes, I've wondered about that many times, and my analysis basically breaks down into two parts. The Albanians that, like me, were born there, whose families came to the United States in the 1920s and 30s and 40s, they've become part of the fabric of America, and they're too far removed. And although many of them like the concept of being Albanian, that's about it. It's sort of
so they have no genuine interest on what's happening?
No, generally they're interested, but no strong desire. And I've also been disappointed because the more recent immigrants that have come since the fall of communism, I have some in New York we're working with. We put together an organization, and some of them are very interested, and hopefully we will do more as we go along. But many of them seem to also be apathetic. I don't know if they're disgusted with what's gone on in Albania and they just want to turn their back on it. But I'm surprised at what some of them tell me. Some of them say, I never want to go back to Albania, and I don't understand that.
Maybe it has to do with what you said. They may be disappointed with Albania.
Well, okay.
Especially in these last 24 years.
Okay, but that doesn't mean things can't change. I've been able to affect change in some small areas just by myself and with a few people. So if more of the diaspora get together, they can affect change too. And I have met some. There are very dedicated, and I'm not saying there are none, but there are not enough.
And they are not united, so they can be a bigger voice and louder, let's say.
We're working, trying to do that.
Is there any single person that you appreciate the most in the diaspora there?
That's a good question. I appreciated my mother and my father because I know they were very, very dedicated people. So it's hard for me to say. I like, she's not really diaspora, but I always had a lot of respect for Mother Teresa, and I know she's coming here soon. And I'd like to take this opportunity to say that I hope the government asks her to speed her sainthood, because she deserves it, and it would be good for Albanians and good for Albania.
I read in one of your interviews that there are two women you appreciate most in your life, Mother Teresa and Musine Kokalari. Actually, they have inspired you in your actions.
Musine Kokalari inspired me because she was a woman of great courage. She was a woman who spoke her mind. It's a tragedy what happened to her. She was perhaps the most educated woman in Albania at the time, maybe the first woman to ever be educated outside of Albania. And instead of taking this resource and using it, Because of her political beliefs, they destroyed her. And this is a tragedy. And now I'm happy that she's looked at as a martyr, where those who persecuted her are looked at as criminals.
But the things have changed in these years, especially after the fall of communism. We are still lacking some models of inspirations from women or even men in this country. What do you think? Is it truthful
okay.
statement?
Well, let me back up. The first time I came to Albania was in 1993. Mm-hmm. And you know, and your viewers know better than I do, that things were not very good. To me, I always used to say it looked like I fell into a land of zombies. The conditions were very, very bad. There have been physical improvements. I see them every time I come here. I see better stores. I see people dress better. I see more businesses. I see more buildings. But for some reason, the political class has failed to mature. But even more important, the judiciary system has failed to mature. And that's probably the most crucial linchpin to making Albania advance.
Okay, so how can the political elite grow and improve? Isn't the public that elects them, or they are responsible for what they elect?
That's very interesting.
And whom they elect?
That's a very important question. In the United States, we call our congressmen, we call our senators, and even though that one person, even if he's not a very rich person, if they get enough telephone calls, they listen because they want to be voted for. I don't know if that system has evolved here. I think one good thing that has grown out of this situation with Fulani is that the political outcry has forced the government to do something. There has to be more of that. There has to be more of the constituents pressuring the people that they elect to take appropriate action.
Do you think finally the public is waking up from an apathy that we usually had in these 24 years?
At least in this recent thing, they've woken up. I hope they don't go back to sleep.
Do you have any, let's say, any role in that waking up?
I think in some cases, some of the things that I've exposed, I hope I've had some influence in the way people have tried to investigate things here. You know, I've questioned things that on the surface look like they were legitimate that turned out not to be legitimate.
What has been your interest in doing so?
Trying to make Albania better. I haven't made any money. God knows I've lost money doing this.
Some of your critics say that you might have been involved, and when you were cut out, that's when the moment when you were public about it. When
cut out of what?
Cut out of possible deals, cut out of influence.
No.
Why would they say that if it's not true?
Why would they say that? Because they have to say something. They want to try to discredit me. The only time that, and if you could say it was a business situation, it really wasn't, because I didn't know what we were going to do. But, and you know, you're showing pictures here of the aid. Mm-hmm. You know, I contributed to sending 10...
This is 94.
This is 92, 93, 94. We sent $10 million here. I didn't get anything for this. I gave this to
Which were collected from the Albanians?
We collected from other NGOs.
Other NGOs.
And we pay for their shipments here. There was a situation with Salih Berisha when he asked me for help in 1995. And I tried to bring Kamal Adham here, who was the most influential and wealthiest Albanian in the world. Salih Berisha asked me to do this. And then after I made the arrangements and traveled to Saudi Arabia, he was the half-brother of the king of Saudi Arabia and head of Sigarimi for Saudi Arabia and one of the most powerful men in the Middle East. I thought he could have made contributions to Albania. All of a sudden, Salih Berisha changed his mind. Very frankly, I was annoyed. I had no business situation set up there. I was just trying to bring him here, and I thought he would have been good for Albania. Unfortunately, he died. So I can tell you that left a bad taste in my mouth for Salih Berisha. But what left a worse taste in my mouth for Salih Berisha was in 1997, because I warned them about the pyramids in 1996. I told them it's not if, but when the pyramids are going to collapse. And I also told them that when they collapse, large-scale civil strife will ensue.
Mr. Kokalari, when you say them, who? Who did you tell that?
I sent correspondence to Berisha. I talked to their ambassadors in New York. I talked to the Minister of Finance here in Albania and other people that had input in this situation.
And you were talking, let's say, on a personal level, or did you have, let's say, a representation from another, the lobbying company or the American?
It was on a personal level.
Personal level.
Personal level, sending correspondence to them. But they, don't forget, they also came to me asking for help. Sully Berisha in 1995 invited me to a meeting and said, how can you help us? Who else can help us? I'm glad to do it. I'm glad to try to help.
So then when 1997, we all know, happened and it was brutal, what did you do after that? Well,
first of all, Marissa Lina asked me to organize a meeting in New York, and we brought together the coalition government, along with the ambassadors from Albania, along with members from the opposition government, and we told Berisha's people that he has to go. I put most of the blame on the pyramids on Sully Berisha. Yes, there were Haidut here that ran the pyramid schemes, but he was warned not only by me, he was warned by international agencies to stop them, but he knew better. So there, the relationship broke, but it got reestablished later on.
When? And why, especially?
Well, at that point, Berisha was taken out, and then another character came in by the name of Fatos Nano.
Voted and elected by Albanian people.
And, in my opinion, very, very corrupt. Not only my opinion, I have documentation that can back it up from the FBI.
He was never found guilty or, in a way, condemned by Albanian court for corruption.
Okay.
That you're accusing.
Okay, but
I'm talking about the Albanian justice, which I think we should take into account.
I understand that.
When we talk about former prime minister.
I understand that, but you know, I can show you here a report from the FBI that tracked him in casinos and have security surveillance of him in casinos with people walking over to him, handing him thousands of dollars and gambling away money. Where did that money come from? Did it drop from the sky? Just like when I accused.
Did the FBI know anything about this money, since you're taking it as a source of your information?
Well, I told them to go follow him.
Did they found anything?
They found him in the casino. They found people handing money. Every time he was losing money, they found people bringing him thousands of dollars.
Yeah, but how can you prove that? Because this looks more like rumors or gossips rather than real facts.
It's not rumors. It's a report that I got from the Freedom of Information Act from the FBI. So if
what year is that report?
This report is I'm trying to find it here. This report is 2004. Nano's entourage travels to Mohegan Sun Casino. A great deal of Nano's visit to the casino was captured on security video cameras within the casino. Nano gambled at the $100 blackjack table, where on more than one occasion, he was handled several thousand dollars in cash by unknown male individual. New York, meaning New York FBI, is still waiting for casino security officials the final total play loss amounts for Nano, as well as hotel information. I don't have the full report after that, but they were watching him. Why?
Do you know why? Because Mohegan Sun is a casino that every American is allowed to go. It's not an illegal activity being there.
Providing you take your own money. Where would Fatos Nano have gotten? Well, please explain. How could he go and gamble away? And by the way, that's not the only story. People know about his other adventures in casinos, where people are handing thousands of dollars. In one case, and I don't have proof of that, handed him $100,000. Why do they do that? Because they like Fatos? But let's get to the story. Let's get past that.
So whose story?
About me attacking Fatos Nano and Sully Berisha. In 2004, I got a call from Linda Ishani. You know Linda?
Yeah, the late Linda, yeah.
She's passed away. I like Linda. She was a nice lady. She called me to come to see me in New York because she knew I was attacking Fatos Nano. And, you know, at that point, Berisha was eager to come back into power.
Linda is no longer with us, so I cannot confirm this, but was she sent by Sully Berisha?
Well, it can be confirmed because she was signed into the security in my building.
Did she talk on a personal level?
She came and she talked, and the first thing I said to her is, Sully Berisha is no good. Sully Berisha is responsible for the pyramids, And she didn't like what I had to say. And she said, no, he's changed. He has a lot of respect for what you're doing with Fatos Nano, and he wants to go after Fatos Nano so he can take away corruption in Albania. So I said, okay, and I came to Albania and I met with Sali Berisha.
What year?
This was 2004, 2005.
Prior to the general elections.
And Sali Berisha introduced me to a man named Mero Baz. And Mero Baz and I cooperated to further attack Sali Berisha. We staged protest. I worked with other Albanians in New York, and we staged protests against Fatos Nano. And I'm not saying I'm the only reason, but I contributed to the image of Fatos Nano being a corrupt individual.
Actually, the camera is showing one of your interviews when you said that Sali Berisha made Fatos Nano look an amateur in corruption.
Yeah, well, now we're fasting forward.
How can you prove that statement?
Now we're fasting forward, okay? Because the thing we have to go back to Sali Berisha about is Sali Berisha campaigned on fighting corruption. And he also campaigned and worked with me to bring up all the inconsistencies and problems in the Albanian telecom industry, which is a burden on all Albanians. It's a burden. It's a tax on all Albanians. And he said he was going to fix the telecom industry, and he said he was going to clean up corruption. He lied. He lied. And for this, I became...
But why did you help him? Let's go back to your help. Because when I have the former Prime Minister Berisha, I'll ask him, but I want your
At that point, I started helping him because of Fatos Nano. I wanted to get rid of him.
So isn't this a relationship like, I hate this guy, I'm going after him, and then I'm having this other, and then I hate this again?
The relationship is trying to get the man in Albania that's going to move Albania forward.
But you were talking with a man that had 97 in Albania. So you weren't talking to somebody you didn't know.
I understand that. He was, did I trust him? Ask me if I trusted him.
Well, I may ask you that. Did you?
No.
So why did you help him then?
Because, as I say, the enemy of my enemy.
It looks very well that you have some Albanian blood.
A little bit.
Because usually that's how we are inspired.
I have a little bit. I have a lot of Albanian blood. More Albanian blood than some of the members of Sali Berisha's family.
Mr. Kokalari, there is another, let's say, rumor that you broke with Berisha again, your relationship, when the New World Telecom deal fell through. What is the story behind it?
New World Telecom,
I couldn't find much information.
New World Telecom was not Berisha. The socialists were in power then, okay?
And
that was not Fatos Nano.
Did you have any interest in this deal?
None, zero. My interest was in breaking it. The records are there. They're there on the internet. New World Telecom was brought here by an Indian businessman who had a relationship with the Daley family of Chicago. Daley became Secretary of Commerce. He had this idea that he was going to come here and get the cellular licenses. He saw Albania as virgin territory. And he probably also saw it as a place where people maybe were not that sophisticated. So he went to Daley and he said, this is what I want to do. I want to go invest. I'm going to invest money in Albania. He didn't have the money.
That was my further question. Did he have any money to invest? But he couldn't find it because he was in the finance system.
He said he had joint venture partners like Motorola. Okay? So Daley then calls the State Department, who in turn calls Ambassador Limprecht. Now, you have to understand something. The people in the embassy are not business people. They are, in some ways, very, very naive, and they're not going to like what I'm saying, but this is a fact. And they figure they get it.
Maybe you are not liking it either because you are an American taxpayer.
I am an American taxpayer.
Saying that they
work for
naive people, exactly.
They work for me. I don't work for them.
So even,
and I don't like the job they're doing.
Even American democracy has some flaws.
I'm sorry?
Even the American
democracy has many flaws. We have many flaws. We have a president that is making a mess of things. So let's not even get into that. But going back to New World Telecom.
So why would you expect Albania to be perfect?
I don't expect it to be perfect.
When even your Americans have so many
I don't expect it to be perfect. America is not perfect. But as we discussed before we were on air, at least in America, when people commit crimes, not all the time, there's some that should have been punished, like O.J. Simpson. That was a travesty. But some very big people, very wealthy people, very powerful people, when they commit a crime, they pay the time. They commit the crime, they pay the time, and even though he didn't go to jail, one perfect example is Richard Nixon. Richard Nixon abused power. He was forced from his office. And he was the most powerful man in the world at the time.
But he didn't go to jail.
Yeah, he wasn't happy.
So this is the main, I will go back to the deal, but I want you to make a clear, let's say, explanation. This is the main problem that you think the Albanian democracy have right now, that people can abuse power or they can get corrupted, but they get away with justice?
It's a very key problem. It's a very key problem. And I do believe it's a problem that the Europeans and the Americans can help fix by putting acute pressure on these people.
But why? First of all, why would they do that? What's their interest? And
Well,
second, why should a sovereign country like Albania allow that?
because they're dependent on these countries. Because a sovereign country in Albania wants to become a part of the EU. Because they're dependent on the United States for protection. The United States made Albania. Okay, so they're dependent on Albania. And we both know that a bad word from the American ambassador or from a leader from the EU can do a lot of damage to an Albanian politician.
But does the Americans have any interest in Albania?
When you say Americans, what do you mean?
I mean the American government.
I think the American government has an interest in Albania, but it goes back to strategic interests. Of course, they're interested in stability in the Balkans. I don't think that's a big problem now. I think things are stable, but who knows? You never know. But they want to maintain stability in the Balkans. And of course, they're interested in cooperation on the war on terrorism. Not just for Albania, but every country. But it is a very important factor.
So how can they force the establishment, let's say, of a good justice system in Albania, according to you?
Well, they could say, let's get rid of people that are politically motivated in these offices. Let's remove them. And they can do it. They
How?
can. They just remove.
We are talking
Listen,
about independent institutions, people elected by on a fair and free elections. How can the
They just
Americans
removed the
intervene?
Prime Minister of Iraq, so they could do it here too.
I think Iraq is a different case,
Okay, but
and
the
the
United
problems
States
are
is
different as
the
well.
United States is powerful enough that they can do things, particularly in a small country like Albania. And I'm not saying doing it for the wrong reason. Because one thing I've always been concerned about with the United States is that they're a little bit too, I think they're too concerned about not intervening. I think they can have their cake and eat it here because Albanians have so much respect for the United States. And they could put people in place so that there is a transparent, robust judiciary. Has to be, has to be. There are too many things that have happened here that shouldn't have happened. And they have to be fixed. And unless that's put in place, unless that structure is put in place, Albania is not going to move forward.
But they have to be fixed by Albanians.
Albanians
would be
need help.
my judgment.
Listen, I don't know if we're going to go into this other stuff.
We will.
But there are so many things here that were so obvious that Albanians, you know, I don't know if they didn't want to listen to it or if they didn't understand it, but they never should have happened. Never should have happened.
Give me some examples. What shouldn't have happened?
Alp Telecom. Alp Telecom. Okay, here, this document was signed by Salih Berisha.
Yeah.
It was signed by Salih
Well,
Berisha.
we are talking about an agreement and a deal that was voted in the Albanian parliament. How
Okay.
can you give opinions
Okay,
out of that?
I was not going to give opinion. And it says here,
At least, I mean facts.
it's going to say
if you have
Vetro,
any,
and
because opinions you
Vetro
can share.
Energy was the consortium they wanted to give it to. Okay, go look for Vetro Energy on the website right now. It doesn't even. It was a phantom company. It never existed. And then after they say Vetro Company is the winning bidder, all of a sudden, like with Armo, Razat Taci drops from the sky. How is this possible? This is not a transparent tender process.
But he's an Albanian businessman,
Well,
so he can, of course he would be involved in the deals.
So he should have been in the front and pre-qualified in the front. It wasn't, just like what happened with Armo. And then they said, as part of the tender process, they said, they had to have a guarantee, a financial guarantee worth 10% of the amount of the contract, 85 million euro. I looked at this, and by the way, there was another change. It was supposed to come from a major bank. In the middle of the process, another bank emerged, American Chartered Bank. And I said, let me look at this American Chartered Bank. And I looked at it. Not a secret, this is readily available on the internet. And I looked at their financial statement. And the financial statement says they have, right here, $250 million in capital. $250 million in capital. It also says they have no international operations. So I said to myself, it's a little peculiar that a small American bank is going to risk half of its capital On its first international venture in Albania, this is not possible.
Is it because you are suspicious every time you see a deal in Albania, or it's usually a red flag when you read something like that?
It's both. I'm suspicious of every deal in Albania.
That's for sure.
And I have reason to. So then I called up the bank.
No, but let me ask you something before we go in the first commercial break. Every businessman wants to make money, you know.
No problem.
In your country, in our
country. I'm
a
businessman.
Here. Yeah.
I like to make money.
So where is the problem here? Where do you see the problem?
There are some businessmen that are legitimate and they do things. They bring in building materials, they sell them. They have services as lawyers, they do that. There are legitimate businesses here. Where the business is where you engage with the government and they play games that are not in the best interest of the people. And by the way, there's a bigger problem here, but just to finish this, I contacted the bank, I contacted the executives of the bank, and I contacted the FDIC, the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation, which oversees all the banks in the United States. And one thing I forgot to mention, and I brought all of this to the attention before they issued this decree signed by Berisha. I brought all this to attention. The fact that Matthew Rozak, who was head of Vetro, was in a complaint from the Securities and Exchange Commission from the United States government. It says here, Matthew Rozak, the chief financial officer of a private company owned by Blue Rhino, director and a trusted confidant of the director, abused his position of trust and confidence and misappropriated material, non-public information.
But he wasn't condemned or he wasn't stopped from his activity.
He paid a fine.
He paid a fine.
And it shows right there it was a red flag. Just like the red flags we have waving around here in Albania. But then the bank said, I can confirm that American Chartered Bank was not involved in the transaction in question.
I see. But where are these suspicions leading you? What was your main concern?
It's leading to me that they were trying to hand, in my opinion, that they were trying to hand the whole thing to Taci, who was close to Berisha. It's a known fact. Hand it to him on a silver platter. And probably get control of it, get control of the asset, so that he could then shop around the world and look for the money. First of all,
we are talking about a deal that didn't go through.
I understand that.
To make that sure.
But back up further, the whole bidding process, the whole tender process, Patton Boggs was not the firm to do this. Patton Boggs, in my opinion, was not qualified to do this job.
Yeah, but Patton Boggs is a legal lobbying firm in the States that you cannot judge where they are involved or not.
But not a firm.
Who are we to judge them?
I am.
Or even you?
I am.
Why?
Because
How?
I know the process. And I know that that's not the type of firm that handles a tender like that. What they should have found was a legitimate investment banking firm from a legitimate financial institution that has experience in the energy sector. This is not Patton Boggs.
But why a well-known American company get involved in these deals? According
Para.
to you. Para.
Para.
You mean money?
Yeah.
Legal money, I guess, in the States.
Well, they got paid fees for Armo. They did get paid fees for Armo, and Armo was another deal. You want to talk about Armo? This was given, same sort of thing. Texas Refinery Associates was supposed to be the winner. All of a sudden, Taci drops out of the sky, and he never fulfilled his obligations there.
Just to say to my viewers that Rezar Taci is not here present, we'll try to contact him.
I'd be happy to talk to him.
His version of the story.
Bring him. I'd be happy to talk to him. And I'll make you another bet.
A few commercial break, very few seconds, and we'll come back to continue our conversation with me Geri Kokalarin. Pas vetëm pak sekonda publicitet dhe do të rikthejmë për të vazhduar bisedën këtu ku e lam. Jemi rikthyer në pjesën e dytë të intervistës me Geri Kokalarin. Në drejt fundit pjesës parë, në fakt, u nxeh pak biseda. We were more heated towards the end of the first part of our interview, Mr. Kokalari, because of the deals you were discussing, Armo and Alpetrol and Telecom. You have exposed these cases.
Yes.
In the media.
I don't know if I was the only one, but I participated.
Yes, some of them. Did you have any problem publishing them in Albanian media?
I've always had problems publishing in Albanian media.
In what do you mean?
Sometimes they publish, sometimes they don't. Sometimes they find them too controversial. Sometimes they're afraid. You know as well as I do that the political powers that be here have influence over some of the media here. And if they're going to hear something that they don't like that's about one of their friends, I've had instances where, not you, I'm not talking about you, but I have instances in the past where I was agreed to have a
By the way, since you mentioned me, we had a bet, and I think I won that bet.
You won the bet, okay? Because
So what is that?
I had in the past, I had situations where I was invited to come to a television show. I'd be in the car going to the television studio, and they'd get a call saying, unfortunately, the interview had to be canceled. Or I'd put an article in, I'd write an article, and they'd say, this is too hard, we can't publish this. So I was a little skeptical that this interview would happen, so I made you a 100 lek bet. I used the old lek, unfortunately. But
So this, you know, this has no value, so I'm
Well-
not getting corrupt live in television.
okay, but I'm going to give it to you anyway, okay?
Thank you.
There you go.
Okay, I'll get that later, because apparently it's difficult. Oh, here it is. So I won the bet.
Okay.
Now, you can talk freely in this media. And of course, as you made it clear in the first part of the interview, these are your personal opinions, but they are
And some are fact.
appreciated, and some facts. They are appreciated because they may help in the broader picture, especially when it comes to corruption in this country, which has been not only to the, according to the surveys of the Albanian public, but even reports from international transparency that it has been in very high figures when it comes to corruption. Let me go back to your relationship with Berisha 2005 and how you, according to you, you contributed in having Fadosnano out of the political picture and then back with Berisha. When did it happen? What happened with him?
With who?
With Berisha.
What do you mean what happened with him?
What happened? Because apparently you are not friend with him, especially after exposing these deals.
Listen, you asked me why I changed my opinion about Berisha after having issues with him prior. I changed because he was singing a tune. He was singing a tune of doing two things that I thought were important: cleaning up corruption and fixing the problem in the telecom system here. So I said, okay, maybe he's changed. Maybe. I don't think so, but maybe. So I was willing to take that chance. But, you know, right after the election occurred, I didn't know him before. I ran into Luzim Basha in the Sheraton Hotel. I don't have a very good impression of Luzim Basha. I'll be very frank about that so we understand where I'm coming from. And I said to him, you know that I've been involved in trying to work to improve the telecom system. Oh, I know. Mm-hmm. He said, well, I'll be in touch with you. I have to go back to New York now, and hopefully we can work together to do something about this. I never heard from him again. And to my knowledge, the telecom system was never fixed. And let's not forget about the fact that he was called to come to testify about his role in the road building project, and he was too busy to come. That's not rule of law. That's not due process of law. Whether he was guilty or not, he should have come.
Yeah, but are you saying this because you didn't have a good impression of him when you first met him?
Well, I didn't have a good impression of him. I didn't have a good impression of him because, again, he said he was going to do something which he was voted for, which he and Saleh Berisha didn't promise me. They promised the people of Albania. Someone has to speak up. I elected myself.
What do you mean you elected yourself?
I elected myself to speak up.
Mm-hmm. For what you think that is right and what you think is
wrong.
What
I think is right. Maybe it's not right. I don't know. Let Albanians judge. Let them watch this program and let them judge.
And the current Prime Minister, Edi Rama, you haven't been saying anything bad yet for him. What does it mean?
He's the best man in the world.
Really?
I don't know,
How do you
Eddie.
see that coming from you?
Let me tell you. I don't know Eddie that well.
Mm-hmm.
I've met him. I know some of the people around him. I know that they're intelligent people, progressive people. Am I naive enough to sit here and think that there aren't going to be problems there? Am I naive enough to think that the power may not corrupt them? No, I'm not. If it does, and when it does, if necessary, I'll speak up. I'm hoping that they will. I'm hoping Eddie Rama, look, let's face it, Eddie Rama has problems. He has a coalition that I have some issues with. He has some other people around him that I have some issues with. Saleh Berisha.
But you don't have issues with somebody who was in power for 11 years in Tirana as mayor prior to that Minister of Culture.
He did some positive things in Tirana. But let's get back. I'm not going to sit here and say that there are no haidut in his government. There are plenty, in my opinion, just like there were in Berisha's. What I'm hoping is that Eddie Rama will try to say to himself what I said to Saleh Berisha when he got elected in 2005. Make yourself go down in history as a great man in Albania. You have the ability to change things here and make things better. Eddie Rama has that right now too. So let's see.
It's almost 1 year that he's in Prime Minister's office. How do you think he's doing so far?
Difficult for me to judge. I think there could be more, in my opinion. I think there could be more done. I'd like to see him open up this issue of Alp Telecom. I'd like to see him open the issue of Armo. I'd like to see him open some of these issues. I want to see where he goes with Fulani. I think it's a good step that they...
But what's the Prime Minister got to do with justice and with Fulani case?
Well, unfortunately, he's going to have to direct... Well, not unfortunately.
And by the way, did you expect what happened with Governor Fulani?
I suspected something was going to happen.
Why?
It's just it was too controversial. And by the way, because now we're getting... I don't want to go too far off path. This whole issue with the Bank of Albania is crucial. Because the Bank of Albania is responsible for the financial system. And if he can't manage the Bank of Albania, which obviously he could not do.
Which is an independent institution according to Albanian constitution.
Fine, but someone, Harry Truman, the US president, had a sign on his table. You know what that sign said? It said, "The buck stops here." The buck stops here.
Only the lobbying firms can enter.
That's right. But
I don't think that was written in Truman's office. But
maybe if Fulani had approached this differently, maybe if he had said, okay, I'm head of this institution, I'm going to take responsibility for it, I'm going to find out what happened. Maybe he wouldn't be in jail right now. But the key is that institution is very important. It's a sacred institution. The Federal Reserve is a sacred institution in the United States. It should be a sacred institution here. It should be beyond reproach. Beyond reproach. And okay, if someone stole a couple of thousand here, but this went on for years. They had the security cameras. They had procedures in place. They ignored them. I had a meeting with him in 1996, along with Christique. This was in the office of Christique Lunicu, okay? And it's important and it's critical because they oversee the Albanian financial system. And the Albanian financial system needs very close monitoring. And that is the interest of the United States.
Why does it need very close monitoring?
Because there's things going on that aren't exactly kosher.
Like what?
There's money flowing through these institutions that, aren't necessarily always legal. And this
But do we have any facts for that? Because
let me tell you. The
FBI?
Forget the FBI. Well, the FBI, yes. But U.S. Embassy has dossiers. They know. The EU knows. They know.
They know
what?
And
by the way, there's someone who knows. I know someone who knows for sure.
Who knows what?
Who knows whether or not these institutions are clean, and if they're not, where the money has gone, and I know someone who knows for sure. And you know who that is? It's this man right here. That man.
Governor Fulani.
Yeah. And
who is under arrest.
I think they should use this opportunity to find out what he knows. And I don't care about supposedly he's a friend of Arvizu. Arvizu should check out on this whole thing.
What do you mean check out?
I've heard that they're friends. He thinks he's a friend, and he wanted to support him.
But personal friendship should not, I think, should not have any interference.
Arvizu should be here to do what's right for the United States and Albania.
Are you judging, are you doubting that he's doing that?
I guess I'm saying that there's supposedly some kind of formal relationship. That relationship should be severed right now.
What sort of relationship are you insinuating?
I've been told that he has supported him in the past. I don't know if this is true, but this is what I've been told.
What sort of support?
They're friendly. He wanted him to be the governor of the bank before. If not, tell him to come here and say that.
So maybe the American interest then was that Fulani should have been
maybe
elected
Fulani
again.
is a good guy to backslap and get people to like him. Maybe that's true too. Maybe he's a good politician. I don't think he's a good banker.
But still, let's go back to
From
the
my
facts
experience with him.
Yeah, let's forget for a moment the personal opinion and go to the facts. What do you think is the best scenario that the government should do now at the parliament to elect a new governor? What sort of profile they should go for?
First of all, I don't think it should be anybody on the supervisory board because they've proved that they have some culpability and that they
they should go.
So they should go out.
Civici has resigned today, one of the council members.
Obviously, it should be someone who's beyond reproach. It should be someone who has deep experience in economic affairs, particularly as it results in central banks. I mean, there are former governors. I can't speak for whether or not they're the right people, but it cannot be a political decision, and it has to be a person that has gravitas. and it has to have a person that's going to be beyond reproach and beyond political reach. And it should be a consensus. It should be a consensus person.
By the majority and the opposition?
Yes.
That is currently boycotting the parliament?
Well, then the opposition is going to have to wake up and stop being children and start thinking about what's in the best interest of Albania.
But they are saying their rights, their constitutional rights are being violated.
Who?
The opposition is saying that.
Well, they violated plenty of constitutional rights too.
Yeah, but two wrongs doesn't make it right.
Okay, but so let's get two people together and make a right decision on this very important issue.
And let's go back to the question that I had further. What has this government done right, according to you?
One thing, and again, it's not really that they've done it right yet, but I like the emphasis. You know, when I came here, I took a trip down south. I've been there before, and I went to Vlora, I went to Rumi, I went to Saranda, I went to my village, Girokastra. And, you know, it's not a secret. I saw this from the first time I went there, that there's enormous potential for the tourism there. It is obviously one of the major engines, potential engines of GDP to produce jobs, not just in the south, but throughout Albania. And he has said, and I hope he's going to live up to it, that he has made a commitment to developing the necessary infrastructure and other things that are going to be needed to make that a viable tour. I can see many tourists here now. There are many tourists in the south, but there should be more. From the United States, from other parts of Europe, they have to come. They have to see it, because it's a beautiful country. I'm very impressed.
So you mean the focus in tourism may be one of the biggest achievements that the government has done so far?
Well, they haven't achieved it yet, but they've said that's going to be one of their focuses, and I agree with it. Now, this has been said before, but not enough has been done.
True. One of the heated reforms, and because of the polarized political situation as well, is the justice reform. How do you think the government, the majority, should address this reform?
Well, I think I said this
and
before.
Do you see any good steps?
I think they have to have and again, you know, I guess it's a little complicated because, you know, I always try to go back to the United States, and at the end of the day, the Attorney General in the United States, there are politics involved in appointing him. But there's also a powerful Congress, even from the opposition, that try to, as I said, try to have a consensus person. So I probably use the same idea here. Try to find some kind of consensus. The person that's there now, to my knowledge, is a little bit, has too much allegiance to Berisha, and I'm not sure where the president stands on this. You know, there has to be a person there that's beyond reproach. The judiciary, the people that sit on the courts, have to, you know, look, it's not a secret. They say the Albanian judges are the best judges money can buy. They have to be, if this is the case, then they should be removed and put people there that are, I know people here that could do this job.
But what do you mean they should be removed by whom? Because politicians have their own interests to control justice. So how can they do this reform? Agree on doing it? How can they agree that they will be accountable for what they have done?
I'm going to keep going back to the EU and the US. The EU and the US, they can't just sit there and talk and say, you have to reform, you have to reform. They have to come here and help. They have to take them by the hand, show them how to do it. Tell the people that are not cooperating to just stop. Because, and why, again, at the end of the day, it's in the best interest of the country and the people here. And all these other things that go on, these telecoms, ARMO, Central Bank of Albania. This has long-ranging effects. These have effects on capital formation in this country. Albania, to advance, has to have private investment. Private investment doesn't want to come here if they can't believe in the court system.
But let me stress again, my question is here. So you're saying the United States and the EU should come here and tell our politicians, go and reform your justice system so you...
Not just tell them.
But what?
Pressure them.
Pressure them? How?
Pressure them to do it.
But pressure them, go and reform the justice system so you can go to jail.
They can do it behind
Why would they
closed
do
doors.
that?
They can do it because they want this country to be stable.
Who?
The Americans. And
you think the Americans want this country to do well more than the Albanians?
And as an American, forget, I'm talking about for selfish interests now. As an American, you know, we just had the crackdown on the marijuana here, which I don't necessarily agree on, by the way. That's another story. But they had a crackdown on this, which was a big business here. That money flowed, there was billions of dollars involved. That money flowed around somewhere. Where did it go? Into the air? It went through a banking system.
So here it is, something that government should have addressed it differently.
So the United States has an interest in terrorism financing. They have an interest in drug trafficking. They have an interest in human trafficking. So does the EU. And it's not a secret that Albania has become a crossroads for these things. This is not my opinion. There are many reports about this. So there are interwoven interests here. Why the Albanians should have a robust, legitimate, transparent judiciary system, and why the EU and Americans should also want it. And they can pressure. When they want to pressure, they can. They can.
Do you think they will? Anytime soon?
I don't know. I hope they're listening. Because they can, and they should do it for their own interest, and they should do it for the people of Albania.
It did get my attention that you approved the government's decision to say no to chemical weapon.
I did.
Did they?
Well, I didn't approve. When they were in the process of debating it, I said I don't think they should do it.
Why?
Well,
we are
now
a
we have to
NATO member.
now we have to start talking about Gredets.
No, we have to start talking about the decision that
First of all,
wanted from Albania as a NATO member to show some commitment to what we have agreed on.
I understand that. Albania has done a lot for its street cred. You understand street cred? Mm-hmm. For its credentials, to prove its friendship to the United States in many regards.
Like what?
Well, during the Kosovo War, there was full cooperation.
It was our interest,
our interest, but also U.S. interest. They have been involved in trying to fight terrorism. So usually when they ask for something, the Albanians do it. In this instance, no one else wanted those chemical weapons. It's dangerous. And my feeling was, if Albania couldn't handle the dismantling of simple, large caliber ammunition in Grdets, and I stopped at Grdets while I was here to go see it, by the way, where 26 people died because of extreme negligence, and the people from that problem are still walking around while those 26 people are in the ground. I saw the memorial for them. If they can't handle that, how are they going to be expected to handle the destruction of that chemical weapons? From what I read, there was a large chemical processing plant in the United States that would have had trouble processing that.
And from what I heard, and this government heard as well, it was technical support and sophisticated equipment that the U.S. would have brought in Albania.
Okay, well, we're never going to know the answer to that. I do know the answer to what happened to Grdets.
But was it a missed opportunity for Albania to say no?
I don't think so at all. No. And the United States can't hold that against them either. They know Albania is a friend of the United States. They were taking advantage of the United States. They were taking advantage of Albania. Albania has to take a position, and what I'm going to say is going to be a little bit of a conflict. On the one hand, I want the United States to influence Albania in good ways, particularly when it comes to developing a judiciary. But I don't want Albania to be a complete pawn of the United States either. They also have to think about their interests. But what I'm talking about here with the judiciary...
But they can start thinking of Albania's interests by not abusing power, by not being corrupted, by thinking of the country, by doing the right reforms.
Well, yeah, but this is in everybody's interest. Maybe not in the politicians' interest, because then maybe I'm taking money from their jet. But, you know.
Talking about taking something, in September 2011, I was reading while doing the research for this interview, you got an envelope where you were threatened for your life? What was that about?
I don't know that.
Yeah.
I've been threatened. I have been threatened before.
Mm-hmm. Why?
I don't know.
How?
That's
so
not...
So you had the picture of a bullet sent...
No, that's not true. That's a story that went around. That's not true. I have been threatened before.
So you are denying that this story was true?
That's not true. I've been threatened.
How? By whom?
Telephones.
Saying what and
saying
in what
stop
regard?
Stop talking. And by the way...
By Albanian people or Americans?
Not Americans. By Albanians, and during the Kosovo War, by Serbs.
But you haven't been threatened for...
And if they stayed on the phone, I told them all the same thing. But I can't repeat this on television.
You can have a moderate way to say what you said to them.
Go do something to yourself, and if you want, come here.
So
I'm Albanian.
When you have exposed these scandals in Albania, or these affairs that you mentioned even earlier, you haven't been threatened?
I've gotten calls from people saying, please, maybe you shouldn't talk like this. Not threats, but suggestions.
Warnings? More suggestions?
Hard to say. I've gotten outright threats, too.
And
That other threat, though, with the bullets, that was some nonsense somebody was talking about.
Have these suggestions stopped you? Will you still do what you have done in the past?
Of course not.
No. So we will see you again publishing things that you think are suspicious?
Inshallah.
Inshallah, actually, we all hope we don't have any such cases. But few last questions before we finish this interview, because I'm running out of time. You were in Girocastra, you mentioned, and you were in Erion Beliai's wedding as well.
That's correct.
Did you hear the comments about his wedding? Why the Minister of Poor does this luxurious wedding? What do you think of them?
I heard them, and I even said to him beforehand that he's probably going to be criticized. It was a beautiful wedding. I'm very happy for him and his wife. I've certainly been to bigger weddings. You know, I hear about weddings they have in the Sheraton where they spend €100,000. So it's not unusual for people to have big weddings here. You know, I would hope that maybe they use this as a model and have other events at Girocastra and use the money to help support the castle there, because that's a focal point of tourism. But I hope they're both very happy in their lives and they have many children.
And Kosovo, another issue that you have had in your heart, and probably it's still in everybody's attention, especially after the elections, almost 90 days after the parliamentary elections, there is still no government. Do you see any problems or troubles coming from Kosovo?
To be very honest, my interest in Kosovo has
shifted.
Finished. I shouldn't say finished, because never say never. I was involved with Kosovo because I believed it should be independent, and because people were being persecuted, and people were having ethnic cleansing committed against them, and people were having genocide committed against them. That was my involvement, trying to bring that to an end. Now, I've got enough problems trying to do what I think is right in Albania. And now Kosovo is not my place. It's not my place.
But they are Albanians.
I understand that, and I helped. When they needed help, I did help them as Albanians. But for me to get involved in politics there, I don't think that's my place.
Do you have a judgment on the way they're building their state institutions?
I think, unfortunately, they're using the model here, which is not good.
And what do you think about this national unification of Albania and Kosovo?
I think it's not going to happen. And I don't think it's necessarily a good idea. And this is something that the Europeans don't want. I think they should think more about joining the EU, integrating with Europe. And if they want to have a federation for trade purposes or whatever, that's perfectly fine. But to talk about a unification of Albania right now, and I'm sure there are a lot of people who don't agree with this, but I don't think it's not necessary. I think they have to worry about setting their own houses right first.
I see. The last question. What is the biggest impression that this visit made on you in Albania this time?
Many.
It may be good, it may be bad, depends.
A number of. Some maybe don't seem silly, I don't know. But certainly I'm more impressed with what I see here in Tirana. I see better stores. I see office buildings going up. I was in an office building yesterday. As a matter of fact, I was right outside of Salih Berish's office. And the very nice office building, as nice as we have in New York. And I see other structures, things coming in a very modern European way. That's good. The bad I see is when you travel around the rest of the country, there is still extreme poverty. I went to Girocastra. I like being there. I like going there. But you can see they need a lot of help. And this it makes me sad. And it's still a problem. I don't know the answer to it. And the other thing I still have a problem with, it seems a little better, is there's still a lot of garbage. And I don't understand why a plan can't be put in place to both. That problem, I think, can be fixed, and relatively simply.
So next time, when is going to be your visit in Albania?
Who knows?
Who knows? Probably hoping for just a tourism visit, or publishing something that you may raise your attention.
Who knows?
Mr. Kokalari, thank you for this interview.
Faleminderit.
Faleminderit juve, siç e pat një rreth shikues me 100 lekë të reja të dikurshme, janë jashtë e fitova këtë bazë dhe këtë intervistë, pasi siç ju besoj keni ditur tashmë prej kohësh në këtë televizion dhe në këtë ekran, në këtë emision, thuhen të vërtetat që duhet i dëgjoni dhe ju, të paktën ato që ne mund t'i përcjellim. Ishte kënaqësi që ju kisha sonte këtu.
Mirë pafshim.
Natën e mirë.